Hello and welcome to the Coaching Podcast, Coaching for Success in Sport and Business. Your host is Emma Doyle, the energy and high performance under pressure coach who is a world leader in unleashing human potential. Buckle up for this high octane session. Let them have it, coach.
G'day everybody and welcome to the Coaching Podcast. I have a very unique guest today, as in my first Taekwondo coach. So here I am with Sadhbh McCarthy, and she is just an incredible woman coming all the way. Obviously, you'll hear her accent in a moment, but from Dublin, Ireland. And she has a thriving Taekwondo business up in Queensland. We're going to talk about her background as a podiatrist and, of course, what she has able to do with her unique system in bringing people and helping them step into their greatness. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here.
I love that. All right. Well, listen, we'll go for a pattern break question first off. If Taekwondo was a sound, what sound would it be?
A kick.
Well, let's go there first. Let's talk about, I let the audience know I did do Taekwondo for about 2 to 3 years to help my tennis when I was growing up. And I remember, kia, that sound that was so important that we made each time we performed a move. Talk to me about breath. Talk to me about why you do it. What's the background behind the breathing specifically?
Well, it's interesting when you describe the sound that you went kia, because it's called a key up.
Ah.
And we do it for a number of reasons. It can be intimidating, for your opponent if you sound aggressive. But it also helps to, it helps with your power, with your energy, and with the intent of what you're trying to deliver.
Mm.
So that kind of exhaling and the shout when you're trying to deliver a particular maneuver is it can be very, very helpful.
Yeah, critical. So what is the intent of Taekwondo versus the other martial arts? Let's just demystify that first. Take me there.
Well, Taekwondo is, it literally translates into the art of hand and foot, which is a little bit of kind of false advertising because it's not a huge amount of punching. So there is one type of punch that we can deliver to the chest guard, and it has to be delivered in a very specific way, and there has to be enough force, and it has to be a kind of a straight arm delivered with the front two knuckles, and then the judges will decide whether that was enough to meet the criteria to score it. But Taekwondo itself is an ever-evolving sport. The rules are constantly changing. I can't actually think of another sport in the world where rules change as often. They're constantly changing the scoring system. They constantly change the rules. It is the Taekwondo from 20 years ago, from when I would have been doing Taekwondo as a teenager compared to Taekwondo now. The skill level is hugely increased. These are athletes. Internationally, the sport is very professionalized. They come from professional systems. They use a sports science based kind of foundation for what they're doing for their athletes. And these athletes are incredibly skillful.
When did it come into the Olympics? Like, when was it recognized? What are the martial arts in the Olympics at the highest level right now? Judo, is karate?
Karate is not in the Olympics currently.
Mm-hmm.
Boxing is, fencing is, but Taekwondo is constantly, it's having to evolve so that it can remain relevant and remain in the Olympics. And that would be the reason for an awful lot of the rule changes. Because obviously, once the electronic scoring system was introduced to the sport, people learned how to manipulate the system and to kick to get it to score. So the styles have changed a lot. And so the rules keep changing and evolving to keep it dynamic, to keep the fighters fighting so that they're not just standing there bouncing and kicking occasionally. And there was an issue about front leg fighting, and they said it looked like sword fighting. So it's constantly changing.
Well, anyone who complains about rule changes in other sports, please, yeah, have a little soft spot in your heart there for Taekwondo. All right, talk to me about the ethos behind the visual. What are some of the things that translate into life skills? Yeah, let's go there next.
The one thing that I've always felt about, certainly for kids and teenagers that are doing Taekwondo, is the ability to stand there on the mat and face somebody who's going to fight you, to have to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. It is incredibly challenging and incredibly difficult to actually stand there and face people who are going to fight you. So what I have found is that the children who do that, and Taekwondo is not a forgiving sport. You win or you lose. There's no prizes for trying. It definitely creates resilience. It gives kids a sense of self-confidence. They have something outside of themselves that they feel that they're good at. So they don't look for the extracurricular type of activities, when they certainly get to a higher level, that they have that motivation, that they're not seeking it from other forms of activities to feel good or something to look forward to, because they believe in themselves, and they actually have goals, and they've got a vision. And the skills, that the resilience that they learn carries across everything, because if they're able to stand there and challenge themselves to this level, that has to carry across into their day-to-day lives. Other things just pale in comparison. So definitely resilience would probably be the top of my list of what these kids can take from it.
I also, someone very close to me within my family, not very well coordinated, and Taekwondo, you don't necessarily need the high level of coordination from a perspective of the routines and memorizing the patterns. And, I love that from a perspective of, and this is somebody who, just struggled to like catch a footy, right? And wanted to play footy with his friends, but really that wasn't his best move, because when his friends saw him try and catch a footy, it was like, no, and then found actually Taekwondo. So that's a cool story about how, embracing it is of all people, and how you can get good at the sport regardless of your hand-eye coordination.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing is, Taekwondo, the nature of the sport and the body type, the kind of the long, lean, the kind of the gangly kids that aren't your athletic kind of kids, that aren't the footy players, that aren't, these kids are often drawn to the sport, and they're actually really, really well suited to it.
Yeah.
So, they and coordination comes, they learn to find their way, and it's definitely a sport that any type of body type or shape or make can really, really enjoy it,
Yeah, I love that. All right, so let's go to thinking back again. You're really kicking me into my Taekwondo upbringing. Shout out to Martin Hall, who was one of the most successful Taekwondo people here in Victoria. And so when we used to do our gradings to go up a belt or up a level, he would wear a suit. Just as a point of difference, I mean, I know that you're very passionate about creating a culture. He definitely had a high performance culture ahead of his time, so much so that when I opened my first business, Tennis Innovations, I paid for an hour of his time for his business acumen. Let's talk about mentors and early influences on this element of culture that you have now. Who impacted you?
Look, I would say that everybody that has coached me through my own, like when I was doing Taekwondo myself, had a level of influence. There were many things that influenced me. Obviously, working in healthcare obviously has had a huge influence on how I deliver it now as well. But I would say the most influential coach that I have had the pleasure of seeing, working, and spending some time with is Dragan Jovic from Serbia. He runs Gaelic Taekwondo, and it's within the Taekwondo world, that's a very, very well-known Taekwondo club, and he's very highly esteemed and regarded. But what struck me about Dragon was obviously with a man with his reputation, when I arrived into his centre, that he did, the first thing that hit me was a celebration. It was a celebration of the athletes. It was a celebration of their successes, and it was such a team culture. There was no feeling of one person was in charge, one person was more important than anybody else. The athletes, you could not see any sense of ego. It was, there was a shared vision. They were all there to drive each other. And every person's role within that was equally important and equally well regarded. And that was something that I hadn't really seen before. And it is hugely successful because these athletes, similarly to Australia, Serbia doesn't have a huge pool of athletes. Some countries, Taekwondo, like Korea is their number one, or Taekwondo is their number one sport, and it's the home of Taekwondo. So they have a massive, massive pool. It's done in schools. It's a different beast. Serbia will be much more like our own situation in terms of a smaller pool of athletes. So the athletes have to be developed from very, very young and brought through the system. And he has done that successfully. And he's made world champions, Grand Prix winners, Olympians. I mean, there is no level of success that he hasn't achieved. And he is honestly the nicest man. We walked in, first thing he did was offer to get us a coffee. He just was very, very accommodating, very cordial, and genuinely passionate. You can see it in his delivery. He's still on the floor himself. He doesn't hand that over to other people. He's very actively involved in the sessions, and he has a team around him. So he collaborates, and he has his assistants, and he has strength and conditioning. So he has the whole high performance within the one building, and they all do it together, and they come in, and he obviously has a set of standards that he expects from his athletes, that he expects them to show up early. He expects them to have their own stretching done so that when they are training, they're training. And it's just, it's not enforced, it's just done. And that's, there's obviously a level of accountability there that he gives, and they also match that. And it works, and it worked really, really well. And that was definitely the most impactful coach that I have encountered.
So what about if a new kid comes to your centre who isn't intrinsically motivated, and mum said I should do Taekwondo because it'll help me with my confidence? And how do you instill this culture? I mean, besides them seeing it and feeling it from the others, is there anything else that sort of sets you apart to help motivate somebody who's demotivated?
Well, I suppose, in answer to what you're saying, like a kid that comes in that's only there because their parent wants them to be there, that's a lot of kids when they first come in. The parent wants them there, and the parents are far more motivated than the children. So it's about creating an environment where the kids actually enjoy it. So, I would spend a lot of time writing programs and writing sessions. I would never do the same session twice. It is never, people's idea of Taekwondo is going up and down a hall doing blocks and high section blocks. That's not what we do. There's Taekwondo, the martial art, and then there's sport Taekwondo, and I'm definitely on the sport side of Taekwondo. The kids work really, really hard, but especially when they're younger, it's through exploration and fun, and it's kind of keeping them engaged, and they don't even know that they're sweating. They don't know that they're working, and they don't know that they're developing skills, because I have them going on assault courses, and it's kind of it's just trying to make it the most fun and engaging session, that at the end of it that they just really enjoy it. So I want them to, for me, it has to be that they're in love with the process. By the time they get to high performance, they have to be in love with the process. If they hate coming to training, then what's
Yep.
the point in what we're doing?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So thank you for answering that. And I'm sure many of my listeners would have just loved hearing that, by the way. So appreciate you sharing the true nature of sometimes what we're dealing with as coaches, right? So appreciate that. Okay, now let's bounce back to professionalizing high performance environment. What do you mean by that?
In my experience of Taekwondo, growing up with it, and that there was a lot of, I suppose, well-intentioned but ill-informed coaches. They do things because that's the way they were shown, or that's, or doing certain exercises for the sake of them being difficult without really having any understanding of why they were doing it or what was the purpose or what was the benefit of it. We're a weight-based sport, so there was a lot of, I still see a lot of poor weight management and bad advice being given by coaches. So in terms of my approach to it, my work as a podiatrist and in healthcare, it permeates nearly every aspect of my coaching. So obviously within healthcare, we have a very logical kind of approach to systems. And that would certainly be the way that I apply to my coaching. So, if a patient comes into me and I do an evaluation of that patient, I take a clinical history, I will research opponents, I will find out what type of fighter they are, I'll get all the information that I can. So it's like controlling the controllables. And then I will, work out what type of style that fighter is, the same as if I've got a patient and I work out what their injury is or what their complaint is. And then, we have tried and tested and evidence-based ways of dealing with certain issues and certain injuries. And I have tried and tested ways of dealing with certain types of fighters. And then you also have to be adaptable because, you have to find what are the imbalances, what are the outliers, what are the red flags, what are, and all of those things. And then it's adapting to the situation that's in front of you and also adapting to the player that you have in front of you, because you could have all the answers, but that player mightn't be able to do it. And so the same with a patient, they may not be compliant, they may not be able. So the way that I approach that system is very, very similar to how I would work in a clinic. In terms of the professionalization of what I do, I'm incredibly methodical about research. I analyze, I get all the data that I can, I break things down. I spend far more time than I should looking at videos and looking for the latest techniques, and because it is always evolving and people find a new way and then people work out. So the answers are there, we just have to find them. So for me, it's about arming my players with enough answers and having them practiced enough that when they're faced with a situation that they can deal with that we have a solution. That takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of research. And I'm very evidence-based in my practice as a podiatrist, and, that tried and tested method. I always remember in uni, we were told, if you hear hoof prints, think horses, not zebras, so it's always, the answers tend to be quite simple. The simplest is the best. And when I'm dealing with my athletes, I'll always say to them, be effective, not fancy. So my way of looking at everything is actually quite similar in both worlds. The other way that I would try and professionalize what I'm doing with Taekwondo is in my approach to the development of the program and to the development of the athlete themselves. So I would do IPPs for all of my athletes, and included in them, I do full biomechanical assessments of the athletes. And I've also developed an ACL risk assessment. There is a lot of ACL ruptures in particular within Taekwondo, and they can often be career limiting. So I felt that rather than trying to rehab an athlete back from an ACL injury, what if we can develop an assessment and criteria that would maybe put an athlete at greater risk, and then try to build preventative strategies into their S&C program. So that's something that I do for every athlete as well. And I do that. We have a strength and conditioning expert who comes in and he does all of their programming, and it's all tailored. It's Taekwondo specific. So in that, again, very much like in healthcare, you have to be collaborative. So I try, obviously when I'm dealing with knowledgeable others, I have to deal with, I'm not a strength and conditioning expert. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not a sports psychologist. There are so many aspects that I don't want to be another well-intentioned, ill-informed coach. I need to know where my limits are, and I need to be able to reach out to people that I know can jump in and do the right thing by the athlete if I'm stuck, or when we need to have a kind of a more holistic approach to that athlete's development and getting them where they need to be.
So what I'm hearing is a huge part of your professionalizing high performance environment is about tailoring everything to the individual.
Hugely, yeah.
And really looking at it from a holistic approach, rather than dumping everyone in the same studio and just teaching the same way. All right. So on that note, what do you think makes a great coach in 1 to a maximum of 3 words?
I would say an infinite mindset. I would say being passionate, being driven, and accountability. That's more than 3 words, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, please, the mindset, the passion, the accountability. Please expand each one of those.
Well, in terms, I suppose an infinite mindset is, I feel sometimes that athletes are restricted by others' opinions of what they're able to do. So I think that we have to let that go. It's not my place to decide what an athlete is capable of. It's my job to provide a platform for these athletes and to give them their shot. They have to bring their own dedication and their work and what they're prepared to do for that. But it is my job to give them the tools, to train them as best that we can, and to try and make sure that we have all of the information that we need. And then the athlete, but if I can't restrict any athlete by thinking this athlete doesn't have it, because that's damaging. It's very myopic. It doesn't have, there's no blue sky thinking in that, because you don't know the little gem that could be there that's just waiting to break out. Infinite mindset is across everything. So it's about the athlete's ability, what they can achieve, where they can go, who knows? And the same for us, for our program, for what we can do. And we're never there. There is no success. I mean, there's success, but it's, every competition, even if it's the Olympics, is just another competition. If you win a gold at the Olympics, you still have to get up the next day and go to training. It's what do you do? You've got to keep evolving. There's always more to learn. And every now and again, an athlete will appear and you'll go, oh my, this athlete is incredible. Nobody can beat this athlete. And then somebody else works out how to beat that athlete. Everybody's beatable. There's always new ways. And so you have to have that mindset that no matter where you think you are, there's somebody that's going to work that out. There's new ways of doing things. So, constantly evolving, constantly looking for the next way of doing things and how to grow and, that kind of thing. I think that just spreads across knowledge. The whole culture of what we're trying to do, that infinite mindset, I think is really, really valuable.
Yeah.
Passion, I believe, it is, if you don't love the process, if you don't love what you do day in, day out, if there's athletes that I've seen who the title of being a Taekwondo fighter that's who they think they are. And they're competing to win. They're competing for the glory. And the glory is nice. We all love, believe me, nobody likes winning more than I do. But I also love what I do. I love it. I love being on the mats. I love coaching. I love the day in and the day out. My kids do Taekwondo, and if my kids walked away from it tomorrow, I would still do Taekwondo. I would still coach. This is my journey, and their journey is their journey, and that's separate. So I think that athletes that actually enjoy what they're doing, I find have greater longevity, and they're more likely to stick with the sport after they transition from being an athlete. So
And
and the
accountability.
last one, accountability. The athletes that are within my program, for our program to work, Taekwondo is not a funded sport. And there has to be buy-in. So it has to be buy-in from the athletes themselves in terms of their commitment and their dedication. There has to be buy-in from their families. The families have to support it. They have to fund them going overseas. They have to pay for their membership fees. They have to pay for, it's a huge financial investment for them. But they have to believe in what we're doing. They have to believe in the vision. That's that shared vision again. They have to buy in. So it's not just it's the whole system. It's the whole system has to buy in. And without that, if any one part, I've heard, we have this phrase, we say high performance athlete, high performance parents, but you actually need the high performance parents because they're going to drive it. And if you have that level of investment from the athletes and the families and the whole system, I owe them the same level of investment. So I make sure that I research, I study, I analyze, I professionalize. I make sure that I go into every single session fully prepared. Every session is written up, it's planned out. I know what I'm trying to achieve. I know hope is not a strategy. And, I certainly don't expect my athletes to give that level of commitment without me meeting them. So that's kind of the basis of what I'm trying to achieve.
Well, we can feel your passion. We can feel that you're very driven, and you've got a wonderful energy just coming through the screen. And yeah, you mentioned parents. I've never thought of a high performing parent before, but this is I want to go there next. Of course, you shout out to your son Liam, who's obviously doing a lot of preparation, potentially for some world championships coming up. Also, shout out to Chris, who connected us. I know his son is also doing very well at the Cadet World Championships. The coach-parent relationship. So maybe first your own journey. Could you share a little bit about that? And could you share what you meant, unpack high-performance parent for me?
So what I mean by high-performance parent is that kids of their own accord won't have the dedication to train 4 hours a day. No, kids will spend 4 hours a day on a PlayStation, but, by choice, they won't want to be, training or, that level of commitment. So that drive comes from the parents. So sometimes it can be seen as pushy, and that these parents maybe are, high maintenance sometimes. But the parents, generally, my experience of these parents is that they're wonderful parents, and they are showing up day after day, driving them to these training sessions, paying for flights, paying for competitions. They're hugely invested, and they're a hugely valuable part of the team. So they believe, and when they really believe and they feel that their child is getting the best opportunity that they can, they're fantastic team members. So I'm very, very lucky to have that level of investment from these parents, because without them, we couldn't do it. We just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
In terms of my own kids, I have 3. Liam is almost 22, my daughter is 19, and my youngest is just turned 15, and all of them do Taekwondo. Now, when they were younger, they did different sports, and they did their gymnastics and swimming and football and rugby and all the usual stuff the parents have to traipse backwards and forwards doing. But Taekwondo was always the main sport. And as they get a bit older, it filters down into kind of just the one, because obviously the more time you spend at it, the less time you have for other activities. So Taekwondo has always been it's always been there for us. The parent coach side is tricky. It can be, obviously, as the parent, you're feeling emotion because it's your child, and sometimes that can be it can be positive and it can be negative. The positive is, nobody cares as much for that child out there as you do. And the negative is that emotions can cloud your judgment. So it has been a learning experience, and we've had to develop some really clear boundaries. So for me, with my kids, when I'm training at the club, when I'm coaching them at the club, I expect them not to get cranky with me like they would at home if I'm saying go do something. That sometimes that I say, if I was any other coach, you would just do what I ask you to do, and you need to do that here. I treat them the same as I would any other child in that class. I don't. I actually tend to I pay less attention to them than to anybody else. It's kind of the way that I've done it. When we walk outside, when we get into that car to go home, I'm not the coach anymore. I'm mommy again, and I am their supporter. I am their soft place to land. I have two hats. And it's very, very important that that line doesn't get blurred. And as they've gotten older, like Liam is now, like I said, nearly 22, and he's a full-time athlete down at the hub, there's been a lot of letting go. So Liam went down to the hub when he was 17. He was in year 12, and he did year 12 online. And he had to go, and he had to move into a flat, and he had to get a car, and he had to learn how to cook for himself and clean for himself. So there was a lot of growing, but at that point, I knew I was no longer his coach. So I had to step back and kind of say, okay, he's down there now, and what his coach down there does that's Liam's training. So but there have been times that have been difficult and challenges, and so he will come to me, especially when things are hard. As kids always go to mommy when things are tough, and he comes to me, and I will give advice if it's asked for. But I also have to stand back and let him make his own decisions. And there have been decisions that he's made that I sometimes feel are counterproductive to his development or his career. And I have to step back and say he's an adult, and whether it works out or not, I have to support him, but he has to make his own decisions. So cutting the cord has been the big learning experience there. So it's and it's tough. It's tough, but that's part of the process. And I think because he's had to move away from home and he's done those things, it's kind of expedited that more maybe than if he was still at home.
Yep.
But my daughter is 19 now, and she's a smart girl. She's studying physiotherapy, and she's in uni, and she's really good. Also has represented Australia, and has a good career of her own, and is also hoping to get an opportunity to go to Worlds and things like that as well. So, but she will also make her own decisions. And like I said, I can talk to her about it. It's not that we don't discuss it, but I can talk to her, but then the decision is hers. And that's been the biggest kind of learning for me, is that I have to respect their boundaries too. So that they know that their decisions are theirs to make, and whether I agree with them or not, I'll support them as their mother. And the coach hat stays firmly where it belongs on the mats. And that's worked quite well. But there's been a few times when, along the way where it's been challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate, again, your honesty is coming through, because it's not easy. And practice one in my book is decision making. And I'm very passionate about empowering others with decision making, especially in sports. Our audience is also business coaches and leaders and managers. What could a leader glean from Taekwondo? What's something that, if we're to sort of, as we land this episode, we've been talking a lot about sport and athletes and high performance mindset. Just take it into everyday land, someone that's a business leader. Go anywhere you want with your best advice there.
I think it's collaboration, communication, trust in the people around you. That if your intentions, if everybody has a shared vision and you're trying to achieve, and that you celebrate each other's success, I think that's so important. That's that celebration of success. It's not, if you win, it's my loss. Your win is all our win. That can only, the team is so important. We can't do it on our own. We need each other. We need to all back each other. And, we're like a family. We might fall out and get annoyed with each other, but at the end of the day, we have a shared goal and our intentions are genuine. And I think that if you have a business and you want your business to achieve, that if you also make it that it's achievable for other people, that there's benefit for everybody, and that you celebrate these people. And that, I've always felt that especially in the larger companies where if people are watching their back, they can't progress. You can't move forward if you're worried about what people are doing behind your back. So if everybody feels, if you can try and have a supportive environment, and that, people really feel like that they're free to take chances and to be creative, and to be curious about the potential, and have that kind of blue sky thinking, and who knows what you can achieve.
Well, there was about 10 brilliant concepts there, everybody. I hope you all wrote them down, but curiosity and shared vision, communication, trust, so many awesome topics that relate to, we're all moving in the same direction, aren't we? With, getting in the same boat and with that shared vision. So I love that. You bring so much to the sport and to coaching with your background in healthcare. The art and science of coaching we touched on today. I know that you leave no stone unturned with your preparation and your dedication to your people. So we really appreciate that. And I love also, just rounding off, probably the importance of a performance pathway program. You're not just come here and, I think that's, if anything, martial arts does that better than any other sport, in terms of a clear progression, and you're even emphasizing today the importance of the individual, as well as having the strength and conditioning, as well as the prehab program that goes along with that person's development to wherever their journey may lead, with, from a career beyond the mats, and when to wear what coaching hat. I mean, I'm just summarizing all the brilliance, Sadhbh, that you have said here today. So what would you say is the one thing that Taekwondo, if you had to, what has it taught you about who you are as a person? Like, just if you had to just summarize one thing for you personally.
I'm a sore loser.
You mentioned you're very competitive. Well, when we lose, the pain helps us get better, doesn't it? And
Absolutely.
I love what you said earlier about when you're facing someone across the mat, the better they play, the better you play.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to win, but also you don't want to just, if it's too easy, then that there's that element as well.
Yeah.
So that's too funny. A sore loser. Well, you've got a fabulous, fabulous Irish accent, of course. A big fan to all our friends in Ireland. And see you soon, Cormac and Missy. Shout out. And yeah, just really appreciate you being on the show and sharing your wisdom and your passion. So thank you so much,
Thank you so
Saif.
much for having me. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. And we appreciate you all with your curiosity. And remember to celebrate your wins. Thanks for listening.
The Coaching Podcast is sponsored by Transition Coach for Athletes, a global coaching, mentoring, and US college sporting scholarship placement service. The service helps athletes navigate the often challenging world of choosing your best college fit while maximizing sports performance. Visit www.transitioncoachforathletes.com. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a rating review on your podcast listening device. And don't forget to tell a fellow coach about the show. The ball is in your court to take action and enjoy your coaching.